This week on the Andrew Yang podcast.
I really do think the governors coming in, whoever it is, Shapiro, Polis, they can say, listen, I'm going to manage the country again. You got chaos. You did 8 years of Trump now, ready for something else. There are no institutional power brokers who can really decide the direction of this primary. Obama can't do it. The Clintons are history now. The boring answer I have is that it's anyone's ballgame.
Our next speaker is someone whose writing you probably have seen, maybe without even knowing it. So Ross Barkan is a prolific writer for New York Times, New York Magazine, where he's a columnist. He's a contributing writer at the New York Times. He also has a Substack under his name, Ross Barkan, that is one of the best sources for political insight that is out there. I know a lot of people that turn to Ross. He also has a novel coming out that's incredibly ambitious. How many books have you now written, Ross?
This will be my 5th book.
And how many fiction, how many nonfiction?
So I have, after this year I'll have 5. So I've had 1 nonfiction, a book on Andrew Cuomo. It's actually getting reissued very soon for some obvious reasons.
Is it called The Prince of Darkness? Is that right?
It's called The Prince, not The Prince of Darkness. But the reissued title is just Cuomo, and they have a sort of dark montage. So that might. I think the subtitle. I think they made it Return of the Dark Prince. I believe that's on the reissue. So
I didn't
the
make it
original was
up.
The Prince. Yeah, it's Cuomo, Return of the Dark Prince. So I have that nonfiction book. This will be my 3rd novel, Glass Century. It's out on May 6th, and later in the year, a sort of politics essay collection is coming out as well from Verso Books called Fascism or Genocide. That's later on in the summer.
That's a pretty shitty choice you have given us.
It's a tough one. Either way, you lose.
So Ross has a very, very unusual distinction as being one of the only journalists I know who also was a political candidate earlier on. So what did you run for and what did you learn?
So I ran for state senate in the far off distant year of 2018. I'm from Brooklyn, so I ran where I'm from. I'm in a part of Brooklyn, southern Brooklyn, and I ran in a Democratic primary. It was actually to face a Republican. I ran in the primary knowing the seat would flip. It did end up flipping. So I was running for a state legislative race, not anything higher or more, any greater prestige than that. But you learn a lot from running for office. I mean, I feel, I cover politicians for a living, and I've done it myself, so I do feel I have a unique perspective where I understand some of the trials and tribulations. It is very hard to run for office. It's very thrilling. I made many great friends, people I keep up with to this day. I met a lot of fascinating people. I got to talk to thousands of voters. It's very demanding, raising money. From afar, if you're sitting on the outside, raising money seems like one of those things politicians automatically do. And of course, if you're already famous, if you're already a governor and you're running for re-election, yeah, it's easier. But if you're someone like Andrew running for president, the way I was running for state senate, it is a challenge. You are calling up human beings on the telephone and asking them to give you money. And that is hard. It's not fun to ask many people, friends and family. You start with your inner circle, you suck them dry, then you're out.
Well
you have
said,
to get
Ross.
to strangers after that, and you got to keep going. It doesn't stop. You have to keep going.
Oh yeah. I mean, people. When I called, they know I was asking for money, and it ends up telling you who your real friends are. And one of the things I say is that when you do something really important to you, guaranteed that you'll make some friends, but you'll also lose some friends. Certainly, I have made and lost friends every time I've run because some people you fully expect to get behind you don't, and then you're like, what's going on there? And you try to be, a bigger person about it, but also as a human being, when you do something that you're that deeply committed to, it ends up hurting your relationship a little bit. It's a little bit like if someone doesn't show up to your wedding. It's like, maybe they had a good reason, but, fuck them. Anyway. So Ross, your campaign manager on that 2018 campaign was a guy named Zohran Mamdani, who some of the people know well as a mayoral candidate.
Yes, and Zohran, if you follow in New York City, is doing extraordinarily well. He's the real second place candidate currently in the polls. The first is Andrew Cuomo, and he's been breaking through at 20% right now, which for someone who's 33 years old and is a state legislator is quite remarkable. And so yeah, so Zohran was one of those people I met on that 2018 campaign. I recruited him in. I'd seen him work on a prior campaign. I was very impressed by him. A lot of the success he's having right now. On one hand, it's always a little surreal to see someone, like I'm sure you had friends who knew you as, Andrew Yang, regular guy, and suddenly you're on TV running for president and you're a celebrity. There's that, bit of like surreal aspect to it. But also, I always knew he was very talented. So I'm also not that surprised. It almost feels like inevitable. Like when I saw him, and I was 28 at the time, he was 26, and I saw him just dealing with people and speaking. And you can see, when you're around politics enough, you start to understand who's got it and who doesn't. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes there are people you don't think that highly of, and they rise. And most of the time, you develop a sense. You see someone speak once or twice. You see how they talk to someone, and a little light bulb goes off. And you realize, like, they're special. There's something there. A lot of politics is luck as well, so you can have the talent, but you don't necessarily ascend. But you need that kernel to start with. And I knew immediately, just dealing with him, he's going to run for something. He's going to succeed at it. I didn't know then what it would be, and of course, mayor wasn't a thing on my radar in 2018, but I'm not surprised. You look at his campaign, reminds me of Andrew's presidential campaign in a lot of ways. Someone with almost no name recognition. You're talking about, you start a campaign at like literally 0%, And how do you start from zero and go to where you are almost a household name? That's a lot of talent, it's a lot of skill. There's some luck involved, but really it's about messaging. And Andrew with UBI, had a very compelling message for people that broke through. For Zohran, he's running on free buses, he's running on city-owned grocery stores, and also he has a lot of charisma, and he's very good at social media. He's using the tools available to him, and that is very important in this era, especially where I remember the media, local media, it's a big problem. It's desiccated. There's a lot less of it. So you can't just rely on 12 newspaper reporters to come to your press conference. You have to find other ways to break through. So he really has broken through. So it's very impressive. And I'm very excited for him and proud of him.
Yeah, seeing your staffer go from that point to now mayoral contender must be really heartening for you. You see someone progress that quickly in 7 years. He ran for state office successfully.
Yes.
In, I believe, Queens, right?
Yes, their state assembly. He defeated an incumbent assemblywoman in 2020.
So you and I were catching up over lunch about the 20 to 40 candidates that we imagine vying for that nomination. You write about politics nationally all the time. I would love to trade names with you and get a sense of the 28 field in your mind.
Sure. So my view on the 2028 field is that it will be the most wide open Democratic primary since at least 2008. It'll really be a return to what you used to see more of. If you think about the last few Democratic primaries, they were all unusual in different ways, including the one Andrew ran in, where it was wide open, but also the former vice president of the United States, Joe Biden, was always looming over it as the polling leader. If you look at 2016, 2020, of course, there was no 2024 primary, though in retrospect, there should have been. And all of these election cycles for the Democrats had strong institutional candidates and establishment-oriented candidates who really loomed over the field, whether it was Hillary Clinton in 2016, Biden coming in late, rising in 2020, but again, always being a polling leader, and of course in 2024, where Biden should not have run again, but Kamala Harris is anointed. So for the first time in what will be 20 years, there are no institutional power brokers who can really decide the direction of this primary. There's no, Obama can't do it. The Clintons are history now. Harris could run again, but she's going to be in a wide open primary. I mean, the boring answer I have is that it's anyone's ballgame. I mean, you can pick any 10 to 15 Democrats, at least right now, who are viable. We know some of the names like, Josh Shapiro, even though she had her gaffe recently at the White House. Gretchen Whitmer is in that conversation. Gavin Newsom's in that conversation. Wes Moore is in that conversation. I think Ro Khanna is very interesting. AOC's in the conversation. Tim Walz, Harris, J.B. Pritzker. I mean, I'm sure I'm leaving more out.
Andy Bashir.
Bashir will run. I think that's guaranteed. I mean, I think any Democratic governor or senator right now, at the minimum, who's under the age of 70 probably is looking at it. I mean, there's no reason not to.
Pete
do
Buttigieg is assuredly running.
Buttigieg. I mean, I forgot Buttigieg. 100% Pete Buttigieg. No question. Maybe you. No, I'm kidding.
Well, thank you for that.
Why not?
Thank you, listeners. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, send them to mailbag@andrewyang.com, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you. Do you order food at home? Do you live in the Northeast? Have you tried Wonder? If you haven't, you are missing out. My friend Mark Laurie has started a company that is optimized for food delivered fast, fresh, and delicious to your home. Licensed recipes from celebrity chefs. You can order from multiple restaurants in the same order, so it's ideal for families. I order from Wonder a little bit too often, honestly, but it's a game changer. So feel free to give it a try. Go to wonder.com, and if you use code Andrew104, you will get $30 off your first 2 orders, and I'll get a little bit of free food. Andrew104 at wonder.com. Give it a shot. I agree with you that first, I appreciate your perspective as a former candidate, because then you sidle up to folks and you see like, wow, that person's very good, or that person has like a natural connection with people. And then other people, it's a little bit less positive, I would say. So I ran in 2020, and my perspective on the 28 field is I think it's going to be someone newer to the country who's a governor. Like most people in this, even if you're into politics, if I showed you a picture of Andy Bashir, most of you might not know who he was. But Ross is like, oh yeah, Andy Bashir's going to run. Andy Bashir's going to be a contender. So I'm just going to name a bunch of governors who I think are running for president in 28 as a Democrat. Josh Shapiro, Wes Moore, Gretchen Whitmer, J.B. Pritzker, Andy Bashir, Jared Polis, Colorado.
Polis, definitely Polis.
Yeah. So that's 6, and I think I might be missing one. Oh, freaking Gavin Newsom.
Gavin's
Mr. Handsome himself.
For the last 30 years, he's running for president. How dare you?
Yeah, Gavin, handsome Gavin. How did I miss handsome Gavin? So that's that's 7 governors off the get. And my instinct is that someone is going to catch fire who's not a household name, who has not been through the media political ringer. I am going to comment for a minute on Kamala, where you were talking about her potentially running again. I do not think she's going to run for president in 28.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think she will run for governor of California in 26.
Yes, looks like that.
And I think that's actually going to be a more interesting race than many would imagine, because there's a lot of frustration in the state of California about Democrats and the establishment. There's a guy named Rick Caruso who I believe may run for governor, and I think if it's Kamala versus Rick, that could go either direction.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, so, wow, that's cool. Look at this, so much agreement. Let's find something to disagree on. But as someone who saw these candidates in action in 2020, and you talk about how Joe Biden was essentially the front runner from the get, or a front runner, which I think is generally true by the numbers, but I will say that, wow, he was not that compelling a speaker during that race. If you all remember, I'm just going to take you in the Wayback Machine to 2020. So there's a primary going on, and Iowa votes, Joe Biden does not do well. New Hampshire votes, Joe Biden does not do well. Nevada votes, Joe Biden does not do well. And so how the heck did he win the nomination? We go to South Carolina, and then Jim Clyburn is like, yo, it's Joe all the way. And then everyone in South Carolina piles behind Joe. At that point, it becomes Joe versus Bernie. Obama calls Pete and Amy and everyone else is like, hey, stop it right now and get behind Joe. And then they get the message. So one of the things you said earlier, Ross, was like, you don't think that kingmaker exists in the Democratic Party where if someone gets a call from Obama, they do what he says necessarily?
Yes. So that example, that's correct. That Joe Biden, I think the reason Biden won in 2020 is most Democrats, rightfully so, were concerned about beating Donald Trump. That was the only, that really became, the primary had all these different debates over issues and ideas, but really when you got to crunch time, Americans like now were sick of Donald Trump, and well, who can beat him? Bernie being the socialist from Vermont, it was the thing he never quite understood is he had to make a better electability argument. He never quite made it. The other candidates too weren't doing as well, so they couldn't make it. Joe Biden's hanging out there as Obama's VP, a lot of Obama nostalgia. Biden then was less senile, honestly, had declined less than he would in the next year or two.
Oh, totally. I mean, I was
he was much more with it then.
Yeah, I was saying that he wasn't a compelling speaker in 2020, but he was freaking a million times better than he was in 2024.
So in terms of the kingmaker, you asked about the kingmaker point, yes, Obama cannot get on the phone in 2028 and tell Josh Shapiro or Wes Moore, Gavin Newsom or Jared Polis or Gretchen Whitmer, you should leave the race to help X. It will not happen. Nothing against Obama. He'll always be Obama. But I did a piece after the 2024 election, twilight of the left liberals and Substack that became kind of popular. And something I said, I made the analogy to Michael Jordan where Obama, the Michael Jordan of politics, you're recognized as the GOAT. Some go LeBron, but I think Jordan, still go Jordan. But what relevancy does Michael Jordan's 1990 Bulls have to today's NBA? I mean, not much beyond nostalgia. Obama too, look, 2028 to 2008, it's a long time. These Democrats will not listen to anyone who tells them to leave the race for any real reason. They'll leave the race when they feel they can't win or they run out of money. There's not going to be what you saw in 2020. It is truly completely wide open, like 08 was, like young Obama came out from relatively nowhere and got the nomination.
Yeah, and there's an example of Barack Obama failing to get his way very, very recently, which is he called up James Clyburn and said we should have a mini primary, and then James Clyburn shut that down and was like, no, it's Kamala. So it has come out recently that Barack Obama was not in favor of the immediate anointment of Kamala Harris as the nominee and tried to install a mini primary and then just got ignored.
Yeah, I think you're already seeing the slippage, and this is all natural, by the way. This is not an indictment on Obama as a politician or as a power broker. Outside of Donald Trump, who literally built a cult like within the Republican Party and overtook it completely, that's extraordinary. We've not seen that in any other fashion in modern times. Richard Nixon and even Ronald Reagan was on. They weren't agenda setting in the same way Trump does in the GOP. So this is a natural progression. Time passes. Bill Clinton's getting older, Hillary's getting older, Obama also is getting older. The new generation, which really been, you think about the last three nominees, they're all flawed in different ways. Clinton really, she lost in 08. She comes back in 16, rehabilitated by Obama. Not a perfect candidate, whether you vote for her or not. She was not a perfect candidate. Biden in 2020, of course, we know his vulnerabilities. Harris in 24. Andrew Yang did much better than Kamala Harris in the 2020 primaries. That's inarguable, yet she was elevated out to be the nominee by default in 24. Kind of strange. Would you, if you had to do a draft of like all the Democrats?
I'm enjoying the Ross Barkan experience.
Would you
Inarguable.
Yeah, no, you polled better and you had more money and you were in. She couldn't make it to Iowa, and that wasn't. She didn't leave the race because she felt she was tired. She left the race because she'd run out of money and the support wasn't there. The support wasn't there. So she didn't do well. She shouldn't have been the person to carry that torch in 24, but that's how history went.
This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. Sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, your back hurts, your neck aches, you don't have the energy you want. You know what? It might be your mattress. And you know one great way to find out? Get a new one. Go to Helix Sleep and take their sleep quiz, get a personalized mattress sent to your door with a money-back guarantee. I know, people can try a mattress and then turn it around. I've been using my Helix Ultra Dawn Firm mattress for months and months, and it has been a game changer for me. And what's wild is that my kids seek it out, even though it was not made with them in mind. I'm sure if they took their sleep quiz, it probably would have said soft, 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 or whatever the heck kids like. Anyway, check out Helix Sleep for snoring, back pain, sleep apnea, just sleeping through the night, too hot, too cold. Helix Sleep can help. Go to helixsleep.com/yang for 27% off site-wide plus free bedding bundle, sheet set, and mattress protector with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. That's helixsleep.com/yang for 27% off site-wide plus free bedding bundle, sheet set, and mattress protector with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. Exclusive for listeners to the Andrew Yang podcast. helixsleep.com/yang. Ross, I wanted to return to this point, which is Kamala was not a great candidate in 2020. I was there. I spoke before or after her half a dozen times. And she wasn't good at something called doing an interview, which is a problem. And if you put a mic in her vicinity and asked her a question, she wouldn't respond without this almost visible process going through her mind of, okay, what should I say to this? What's the proper response? The cycle you didn't see, or the process you didn't see, was like, what do I think, or what do I believe? She seemed to be trying to avoid a landmine. That was true in 2020, and it just wasn't very compelling. And when she became the nominee in 24, I had this very, very sinking feeling at the time, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't think that particular trait changed over those intervening 4 years. And so I was with everyone else saying like, hey, not everyone else, but with Obama and some other people being like, ooh, you should have a primary, And there was this brief window. So Joe Biden drops out, which I believe was the right thing, albeit, 8 months too late, but he did the right thing 8 months too late. And then there was this brief period when J.B. Pritzker or Andy Beshear or someone else could have said, hey, I'm running to be the Democratic nominee. But then each of them folded their hand, and it was literally minute by minute. Like my phone was blowing up with people being like, who's running against her? Who's running against her? Someone's got to run against her. We have to keep this just from being like, Kamala immediately. And then the last domino to fall was J.B. Pritzker. Everyone was looking at J.B. Pritzker because J.B. Pritzker is a billionaire and had a campaign in waiting and the rest of it. And so it's like, ooh, if J.B. does this, then it'll be on. But then after J.B. said I endorse Kamala, then everyone in my universe has let out this collective groan, and it was like, it's over, it's too late. Like they're just going to give it to Kamala. And then I came out and endorsed Kamala the next day because I was like, screw it. If this is the way it's going to go, like I might as well be like a pro-civilization force and like let my people know it's like, look guys, like Trump is not the answer. But I had this sinking feeling, and it was playing out minute by minute as Joe Biden was dropping out.
It was a remarkable stretch of time from the end of June. I think it was June 24th, the debate. Biden drops out sort of towards the end of July. And yeah, I was at the DNC, I covered it. So the DNC was in the third week of August, I want to say. It was towards the end of August. So there was time for a sort of mini primary, which would have been very unusual, but it beat the alternative. And there was a brief moment, Harris got the polling surge. She looked good, but the problem was, it's the same thing Andrew said, she was not good with any media. And I'd argue with people about this because I would say things like, oh, she should talk to journalists more. And they'll say, oh, journalists are the past. You don't talk to the media anymore. Then I go, okay, she can go on these newfangled podcasts and go on all these streamers and all these popular places. Why doesn't she do that? And she didn't really do much of that either. Eventually she did, but it was already September. There was a stretch of time from when she became the nominee at the end of July to early September. She did a single interview. That was a sit down with Tim Walz with CNN. That was an extraordinary length of time to not interact with any sort of media, new media, old media, whatever. That will not happen again. The 28 Democrats are wiser in that way, and I think they're going to be more talented where they'll be talking to everyone. And if you think about like what is your media strategy for running for office, any office honestly, for president, for mayor, for state legislature, it's talk to everybody. It's what Andrew did, it's what Buttigieg did in 2020 when he rose up in the polls, it's what Zohran, my buddy Zohran, I mean, he talked to the New York Post editorial board and they hate him, and he went in there and answered their questions, and then they call him names in the newspaper. But you know what? You talk to people. Sometimes you neutralize attacks that way. Sometimes you just get your face in front of more Americans, more voters, and you get more fluid. If you're a good candidate, you can do stuff like this and speak from the top of your mind. And that just was not something she was comfortable doing. And I predict the next Democratic nominee in 2028 will be someone who's good at those things, because it will be an open primary. The winner will be battle tested. That's so important. There's a reason you go to New Hampshire, you go to South Carolina, you go to Nevada, because these are places where you have intimate settings like these. You have bigger settings as well, but you get that experience, and it is a survival of the fittest. It really is. And I think I'm optimistic for the Democrats. A fit person, man or woman, I think it can be a woman, will emerge from that pack and will face the illegal third term of Trump. But I actually don't think Trump will run for a third term. Likely JD Vance, who, to be honest, I'm not impressed by his political skills. So if I'm doing I don't bet, but I'd say Democrats slight favorite at least for 28. That'd be my soft.
Well,
prediction.
if they play this election straight, which I don't know about the rest of you, but like I'm not sure that it's going to be a straight up election and be like, oh, you win, we lose, we go home. I agree with you on JD Vance, because JD Vance is something called an asshole. But if you look up the JD Vance election results, he won a 3-way primary with something like 32%.
And that was because Trump endorsed him.
He just got the Trump 32% against 2 other candidates. So even Ohioans were like, I don't know about this guy. And then because it's red versus blue, and Ohio's now +9 red, so his Senate race was against a guy named Tim Ryan, who was in my presidential cycle, who is, in my opinion, an above-average candidate, member of Congress, Ohio, an above-average candidate, and J.D. Vance is, in my opinion, a below-average candidate. So I was like, ooh, are those two things together going to be enough to overcome like a 9-point red swing in the state of Ohio? And the answer was not even close. I think that JD beat Tim by maybe 6.
Yeah.
So it's like those two factors ended up being about 3 points.
Yeah, it was Ohio is a very tough state for Democrats. Even Sherrod Brown ran as strong as one could last year, and he might run again, but it's gotten very difficult for a variety of reasons. So I think Vance's struggle, if I could sort of judge him versus Trump, to be honest with you, Trump, of course, asshole as well. But Trump, even if you hate him, there's like even now, there's like a demented charm to Trump. Like he has this sort of very odd stand-up comics like sense of humor. He's very entertaining. He is a character. There's a lot there with Donald Trump. With JD Vance, he really should have just been, a replacement level pundit for some like center-right online magazine. That was his fate, or being a hedge funder, doing the Peter Thiel route.
He's not smart enough to be a hedge funder. The conservative pundit thing is right.
Yeah, but he wasn't like that. He was doing that, and like he was, Hillbilly Elegy, decent book. It's okay. I didn't love it. I liked it. And then he gets a window. Perfectly timed book, though. All books, as I know, books are all about timing. His timing was wonderful. March 2016, Trump is a phenomenon. People like you are wondering, what is this Donald Trump thing? Here's this 32-year-old guy from Appalachia who's got a Yale law degree to explain it to you, right? So it's great. Runaway bestseller. Trump wins, even better for his career. And you see there's like sort of a very interesting pivot point for Vance, where Vance could either become a sort of like center-left Democrat or go to the right. And you could see he's actually thinking through what to
He's choosing,
do.
and then he realizes, wait a minute, I'm from Ohio.
Right,
I have no prayer of elective office if I'm a Democrat.
If Ohio had been a Democratic state, you would have seen JD Vance running to be a Democratic, maybe a Sherrod Brown even style with less talent, but that style. Instead, he's a smart guy, Vance, politically. So he saw MAGA is winning. I will join MAGA. I will repent. I will change all my views.
Yeah, he has some terrible quotes on Trump. You're like, Trump is like the heroin of political candidates, and now he's like, yeah, I love it. Love heroin. This podcast is sponsored by Factor. The weather is getting better. We want to get outside instead of spending all of our time prepping meals and cooking, especially if you can't cook like me. Evelyn was not into eating my cooking, shall we say. That's where Factor has been a total game changer. Instead of chopping and cooking, I grab a ready-made meal from the fridge, pop it in the microwave, and in 2 minutes, I've got something delicious and satisfying. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. You can choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more, and it tastes great. You feel like you're doing the right thing by yourself. Factor has my back for busy mornings too, with quick breakfasts and lunches I can take on the go, plus snacks and desserts that seriously hit the spot. Get started at factormeals.com/yang50off and use code yang50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code yang50off at factormeals.com/yang50off for 50% off plus free shipping. On the Trump appeal, and JD Vance doesn't have it. So there are 3 disciplines in American life that Trump combines. So there's politics, and then there's pro wrestling, and he's literally a pro wrestling Hall of Famer.
Yes.
And then there's discipline number 3, which is insult comic. And so you know how before I said Jonathan Haidt, there are these 6 universal values, and like conservatives have like more chords to communicate with more people. I think those 3 strains give Trump also like much more breadth and populist appeal. And one of the major problems that Democrats have is Democrats cannot access 2 or 3. They're just like, hey, politics, we're all going to sound like each other. I'm going to be safe for cable TV and whatnot, and like I will never be profane or whatever. I remember there's one time New York Times interviewed presidential candidates. They're like, what is your favorite swear word? And I was like, fuck. And then they had this video of other people being like, "Oh, like that's not a da 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 da." And I was like, "What the fuck is going on over there?" It's like, so you have these 3 strains, and Trump combines them all. JD Vance does not.
In defense of Vance, even if he was supremely talented, Obama level talent, ironically, very similar biography to Obama, including the best-selling book and the quick rise in the Senate. 2028 will be a tough, I think as of now, a very tough year for the Republican nominee, because it's going to be a de facto incumbent running. You're going to be running on 4 years of Trump. You're seeing what a few months of Trump look like. Even the Trump-friendly, MAGA-friendly people are thinking twice. Trump tanking the economy was the difference maker. In the first term, the economy was strong, not necessarily anything Trump did, but he presided over sort of like a peacetime economy. Now, not so much. So I think whoever the nominee is, Vance, someone else, Trump again, the Democrats, if they run a strong race, they are favorites. And I think it'll also be hard for Republicans to realistically steal the election. I'm sure they will try. But the mechanisms to do it outside of sort of some insane martial law scenario are hard, are honestly hard.
The 2 major issues in November, my opinion, generally speaking, inflation and the border. And one of the big opportunities for Democrats in the cycle, in my opinion, was to have a governor, let's call it Gretchen Whitmer, flanked by Josh Shapiro. And then if some American says, hey, I'm mad about the border, then they could have looked back and they're like, yeah, me too. Like I was in Lansing, I was in Harrisburg. Like we were nowhere near the border, and so Kamala could not make that argument. Kamala had to be like, yeah, it's fine, it's great. Like like I was the border czar, but it wasn't really a thing. And so she was put in this very, very difficult position where she had to somehow be a change candidate, but also stand by everything that the current administration had done, including some things that people really did not like. And this was compounded by the fact, reporting just came out, that Joe Biden literally was saying to her, it's like, you cannot show any daylight between the two of us. You must be proud of all of our accomplishments and whatnot. Like, I mean, really, one way he screwed Kamala as a candidate, because if Kamala was running and he was like, hey, you can throw me under the bus, sister, just blame everything on me. Be like, hey, if we'd done it the Kamala way, it would have been totally different. Like that, then she would have had more of a fighting chance too. Though, again, like in my opinion, there should have been a genuine primary, and the strongest case you could make is like, I was nowhere near the scene. I was like busy making the economy of Michigan work well, and then people would be like, oh, it's actually kind of interesting. Tell me more. I mean, that's like this real anti-DC sentiment. It's one reason why, again, I think that the strongest contenders in the Democratic field of 28 are going to be one of these 7 governors. Maybe there's like an 8th governor that creeps in.
The governor point is a good one because we've seen in the recent past senators performing very well in 2020 primary. It was the senators at the top. But I do think given Trump's mismanagement of the government, given Doge, everything you're seeing, there's going to be a hunger for a candidate who can say, I will return the country to normal. I will manage the government. I will make government work for you. That's a message that in past cycles would not be that compelling, honestly. But right now, you're coming off of Trump chaos, a different chaos than term one. I'll give you an example. My mother, she recently retired from HUD, Housing and Urban Development. She luckily retired right before Doge. The first term Trump for her at HUD worked in the New York office. It wasn't that bad. I mean, my mom does not like Trump, but her job didn't change all that much. All her colleagues stayed. They're allowed to do their work on affordable housing programs, making sure homes don't have lead paint, all those good things. Term two, literally her entire New York office is gone. There's one person left. They had 30 plus people, and it's down to one.
Because the other people left or were purged or what?
They were purged. They either quit or they were thrown out. The way what Musk did with Doge, literally they got those buyouts, which are probably illegal, or they're reassigned, forced out. But the office is in essence been decimated. So the difference between term one and term two, that was the difference. And you're seeing that across the federal government, Social Security Administration, Department of Veteran Affairs. I mean, the Musk thing was just very dumb. Trump was a little smarter. You want to do a little austerity in the government, okay, but don't do, blanket layoffs across a bunch of very important agencies. So I really do think the governors coming in, whoever it is, Shapiro, Polis, they can say, listen, I'm gonna manage the country again. You got chaos. You did 8 years of Trump now, ready for something else. At that point, I do think that message is going to be compelling to moderates and independents and even some progressives, and also whoever the Republican nominee is. Unless there's some economic miracle in the next few years, things just get really good for some reason, it's going to be very hard for Vance to say, hey, look at the country. No one really wants more of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I talked to people who were staring at dashboards that reflect the economy, and it doesn't look good for this period.
Yeah, that's why I said in case there's some, but yeah, it looks like at the minimum it's going to be mediocre for the next 3 years.
Yes. This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. How did you choose which internet service provider to use? The sad thing is, most of us didn't have much of a choice because ISPs operate a lot like monopolies in the regions that they serve. They then use this monopoly position to take advantage of customers, and yes, they even sell your data, your activities to advertisers and big tech companies, and you don't see a dime. That's why I protect my internet surfing and devices with ExpressVPN. When you use ExpressVPN, it's like a magic portal to a perfectly safe and anonymous internet. And don't take my word for it. This is the #1 VPN service according to CNET. It's used by major companies all over the world. So stop handing over your personal data to ISPs and other tech companies who then mine your activity and sell off your information. Protect yourself with a VPN I trust to keep my privacy online. Visit expressvpn.com/yang. That's expressvpn.com/yang to get 3 extra months free. Go to expressvpn.com/yang right now to learn more. So somehow, Ross, on top of this awesome column and Substack that you produce, and obviously being incredibly knowledgeable about politics both in New York and nationwide, you've managed to write a nearly 500-page novel that comes out next week.
Should buy it.
So tell us about your new novel, Glass Century.
Yeah, so I wrote a novel. It's a big social novel. It spans the 1970s to the present in New York City. It follows a family through their trials and travails. It's a love story. I think for those who are interested in politics and history, it spans like a very interesting part of New York and America's history, which is the fiscal crisis of the 70s. It goes through 9/11 and up to COVID. And actually, spoiler alert, there is a cameo, a small one from Donald Trump, but it's in the 1970s and not in the present day. And something I was very interested in was telling the story of this family in New York City, and also how the city and events interact with them. And as I was writing this book a few years ago, I realized you can't tell this story, this American story, this New York story, without Trump in some form, and also without the resurrection, the rise of the city, the struggles of New York as well. 9/11 also plays a central role. So I grew up in the city. I was a child during 9/11. I remember it very well. It's remarkable now. There's a lot of adults who have no memory of 9/11. We've gotten to that point. My father worked in the World Trade Center. He nearly died. He missed out on dying because he had a breakfast meeting at Windows on the World, which, if anyone knows, was the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center, but he canceled due to a doctor's appointment, and he was supposed to be meeting with someone from the Port Authority. That person perished. And so he's very lucky. His office he worked when the smaller buildings, the office was destroyed. So there's a character in the book kind of building off those experiences. So if you like, plot-driven, narrative-driven, big social novels, this is one of them. Those novels were very in vogue for a long time. They fell out a bit, but I think they're coming back. People want a good story and, a good, meaty, character-driven story. And, I think if you're interested in history, in politics, in love stories, it'll be appealing to you. It reads well, I promise. Not one of those books you're gonna sit there and really struggle through and throw across the room.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very well written. The characters are fully drawn. It was incredibly impressive to me because the scope and the ambition of the work is well beyond anything I ever would have tackled. Like looking at, not to say, many of you know, I co-wrote a novel.
Yeah.
But I will be the first to say that all of the heavy lifting was done by my writing partner, Stephen Marsh, and really, I was downloading the ideas and then he was drawing characters. So I now know my limitations and do not believe I could be the primary author of a novel, whereas you took this novel and it was sweeping in its scope, both in terms of time and human experience, love, marriage, the rest of it. And I was blown away by the pure confidence and ambition, Ross. Was there something like within you that you wanted to share that you thought, hey, I can't do this any other way?
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. It really means a lot to me. Ambition is an interesting thing, right? Where does it come from? How do you believe in yourself? Because the novel itself, it's a very daunting form. Anyone can write a novel. But it's not the same as writing a short story. It's not the same as writing a speech. Like, I write political columns. I've done a lot of journalism reporting. It's very different, right? You're imagining worlds. You're imagining people. You're thinking on a grander scope. I'll say I always loved fiction, just as an art form. I've been a reader, really a heavy reader since my late teens, and so I do sort of try to see what other people are doing. I would say I felt motivated to tell a story. I felt motivated to write certain characters. I wasn't too worried about failing in that. I think if you're trying really hard and you're putting yourself into a work, you're really giving yourself over to a work. I think that's something artists do, and in all walks of life, whatever you do, you really dedicate yourself fully. I think the product is better. So for me, it was just a very meaningful time writing this book, and I felt very motivated by it. And so, the worst comes to worst is you write something you're proud of, and maybe it's a flawed thing, and all books are flawed, right? But you have, I think you have that inner drive to do something. Whatever you do in your life, if you're doing it well, you have to enjoy it. Like, I really believe that. The novel for me wasn't work because I genuinely enjoy doing it. And if you have that joy and that love for it, I think it does become better.
It was really impressive. There's even an Asian in it.
There is an Asian.
I hope they make a movie out of Glass Century.
They should.
They should. But even the way you spoke about it just now, Ross, was impressive to me, where you said it's like, hey, if you really put yourself into something in heart and soul, because that's what I felt like it took. And the interesting thing to me was that, first, let me say again, like, I would not be able to do what you accomplished with this novel. The second thing is that, like, I write nonfiction regularly, and it's like a very, very big mode switch. And another thing that blows my mind is that you've been producing nonfiction political columns this whole time, and then you somehow recalibrated and produced this epic, sweeping novel.
It's definitely a mode switch. I'll say it's something that used to be more common. So one of my laments is that more journalists and sort of nonfiction type writers aren't doing novels. If you look at the 20th century, you think of, like, the very famous Joan Didion's known for her essays, and her nonfiction, wrote a lot of novels as well. Jimmy Breslin, the great newspaper columnist in New York, also wrote many novels. You take Norman Mailer, very famous for doing both. It used to be something that writers did more of, and I think we entered kind of a specialization era. That on one hand, if I'm giving advice to, like, a young person, one piece of advice you can always give is find the niche and succeed at the niche. Like, that is true. It's not wrong. At the same time, it helps to be flexible. It helps to work in different modes. I think you become better working in different modes, and I think a lot of writers especially get very afraid to do different things. Like, you say, I'm a columnist, or I'm a reporter, that's what I will do. I won't venture into this new realm. And similarly, I would say, I deal with other novelists and writers, they're not always the most savvy about politics, or if they know politics, I'd say in today's world, it's very predictable politics. It's not the wrong politics necessarily, but to be honest with you, if you talk to a lot of writers sort of on the literary side, it's kind of like a version of the DNC sometimes. And it didn't always used to be that way. If you look at the great writers of the 20th century, it was very left-wing people. It was fascists. It was you pick from literal fascists like Ezra Pound, or T.S. Eliot was basically a monarchist, to very progressive left-wing writers, to writers who were against the Vietnam War. Some, like John Updike, were for the Vietnam War. So you had this, like, very, like, heterogeneous era that I really miss and wish would come back, where artists and thinkers were willing to kind of take risks to, do like what Andrew does, like do different things, and we're in a world now, which I don't love, where if you are attempting something different or trying to range elsewhere, trying to move outside the box, it feels like there's a person there is telling you, get back in the box. What are you doing? How dare you? And that's a shame.
Hate the box.
It shouldn't
Fuck
be
the
that
box. I want
out.
free. Well, you may be one of the great exemplars of writing in the 21st century, my friend. I mean, you're world class, and you write for the best publications in the country, and you're spreading your wings. This novel is a very, very impressive piece of work. Anyone who has an affection for this kind of, I'm going to call it historical fiction for a moment, but it's more than that. It's like a family. It's like a family drama. It's a lot. But Ross, if someone wants to keep up with you and your work, they can very easily do so.
Yeah, so I'd say the easiest thing, subscribing to my Substack. So if you're not familiar with Substack, it's like a newsletter service, super easy. So if you honestly punch my name into Google, Ross Barkan Substack, it's called Political Currents. It'll pop up right away. There's a button to subscribe. It's free to subscribe. Actually, I paywall very little. I probably should paywall more because that's how you make more money. But honestly, it's less fun for me if I'm reaching less people. So I would say 90% of what I do in Substack is free. And I do a mix of things. Like I do a lot of politics. I do some New York stuff. I do some national stuff. I do sort of these cultural pieces, which don't necessarily fit into one bucket. So follow me on, I'd say Substack's the easiest thing you can do. It takes 2 seconds.
I do it. It's
money.
true. Most all of it's free.
It's free.
I don't know how Ross lives.
It's the other, yeah. It makes me makes me some money. It's the other stuff makes me money.
Yeah.
A little bit from the Substack.
Let's give Ross a warm round of applause. Thank you for talking sense to a lot of people.